Beneath Nyla's stunning exterior, there was an anger that no one wanted to see. A force growing silently over time, feeding on isolation, stress, and years of captivity. Even Marina, who knew Nyla better than anyone, couldn't have predicted how that hidden storm would one day erupt. It wasn't just a matter of one animal turning aggressive, it was the culmination of years of pressure, systemic neglect, and the illusion of control that humans so often place over wild creatures. The signs had been there, small, repeated warnings, but no one truly listened. It was a warm, humid summer afternoon at Ocean World Orlando, the kind of day when the sky glared a blinding blue, and families poured through the gates, drawn by the promise of spectacle and wonder. The scent of popcorn, sunscreen, and saltwater hung in the air. Children tugged at their parents' hands, eager to grab a good seat. The main event, the Dances with Giants show, was about to begin. It was the centerpiece of the park's offerings, an awe-inspiring routine featuring human trainers performing synchronized stunts with colossal orcas. As 2:30 p.m. approached, the amphitheater filled with noise and anticipation. Spectators packed the stands, their voices rising in chatter and excitement. The pool in the center glistened under the sun, perfectly still, reflecting the steel towers and the curved glass canopy above. Backstage, Marina Lero was preparing like she always did, calm, focused, radiating that confidence she was known for. She had done this show dozens of times. She and Nyla had practiced the sequence endlessly. There was no room for error. The highlight of today's show was a trick they had executed many times. Marina would signal Nyla to rise beneath her, lifting her gracefully on the orca's rostrum above the water's surface, an elegant, iconic pose. It symbolized trust, harmony, and years of companionship. But on this day, something felt off. As the show began, there was tension in the air that Marina couldn't quite explain. Nyla was slow to respond. Her usual energy and alertness were absent. She swam in slow, deliberate circles instead of rushing to her mark. Marina gave her familiar hand signals, but the orca's reaction was delayed. Her movements lacked their usual precision. Marina tried to keep things moving smoothly. She smiled for the audience, maintained her composure, and whispered to herself that everything was fine. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. At 2:47 p.m., the moment arrived. Marina moved into position at the edge of the pool, gave the signal, and waited. Nyla surfaced slowly, eyeing Marina with an expression that those in the crowd would interpret as intelligence and affection. But it wasn't. It was something else entirely. Instead of rising beneath her trainer in a flawless arc, Nyla nudged Marina playfully at first, an off-script gesture that caused a ripple of laughter from the crowd. Marina smiled, played along, and tried to guide the orca back into formation. But Nyla wasn't listening. Then came a second nudge, but this time it was not playful. It was powerful, abrupt. Marina stumbled slightly but recovered. Her instincts told her to step back, but years of trust and experience urged her to stay. She gave the signal again. And then, everything changed. With shocking speed, Nyla surged upward, her massive jaws opening in a flash. Before Marina could react, the orca clamped down on her arm with a force that made the water tremble. Marina gasped in pain, her body twisting violently as Nyla pulled her into the pool. The audience gasped, still unsure if this was part of the act. Some cheered, unaware of the terror unfolding before them. Beneath the surface, Marina was plunged into chaos. Bubbles, motion, pressure. Nyla held on tightly, dragging her deeper into the water. Marina fought to break free, kicking, twisting, trying desperately to reach the surface. But Nyla wasn't letting go. Years of training, of love, of shared time in the water, it all seemed meaningless now. The pool roiled with activity. Trainers shouted into radios. Emergency alarms blared. Some guests screamed as they realized this was no performance. Security rushed to evacuate the crowd. Chaos erupted. Underwater, Marina's lungs screamed for air. Her vision blurred. Her body grew weaker. Nyla finally released her only to grab her again, this time by the torso. Marina's wetsuit tore as the orca thrashed. The water turned pink with blood. For several agonizing minutes, Nyla refused to surface. She circled, dove, rose, and dove again, holding Marina like a rag doll. By the time emergency divers reached them, it was too late. Marina's motionless body was pulled from the pool, pale, broken, lifeless. Attempts to revive her were immediate and desperate, but her injuries were too severe. She was declared dead at the scene, her dreams shattered in the very place she had once felt most alive. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines around the world carried the tragic story of the star trainer killed by her beloved orca. Ocean World Orlando shut down operations, launching an internal investigation. Animal rights groups protested outside the gates. Former trainers gave emotional interviews. Families who had witnessed the horror reported trauma. And the question on everyone's mind was, how could this happen? The truth was, it had always been a risk. Orcas are apex predators. Intelligent, emotional, but also dangerous when confined. Nyla's history of aggression had been buried in reports, dismissed by officials, rationalized by trainers. And Marina, dedicated, passionate, and loyal, had ignored those signs, trusting the bond they had built over years. But in the end, Nyla wasn't a partner. She was a wild animal, confined to a concrete tank, denied her nature. And that frustration had finally boiled over. In the months that followed, Ocean World faced intense scrutiny. Nyla was removed from public performances, placed into a private tank where she no longer performed. The park re-evaluated its safety protocols, restructured its training programs, and promised reforms. But the damage was done. A life was lost. A family shattered. A legacy stained. Marina's funeral was attended by hundreds. Fellow trainers, friends, and family gathered to celebrate the life of a woman who gave everything to the creatures she loved. Her story became a symbol, not just of tragedy, but of a deeper truth about the price of captivity, the illusion of control, and the wildness we can never tame. Today, her name lives on in both admiration and caution. In whispered conversations among trainers. In signs posted at tanks. In documentaries questioning the future of marine shows. Marina Lero died doing what she loved. But her death was not just a loss, it was a reckoning. A reminder that no matter how close we believe we are to nature, some distances were never meant to be crossed. And sometimes, love is not enough to protect us from the deep. In early 2020, the world watched in quiet awe as Betelgeuse continued to dim at a rate of 0.01 magnitudes per day, its light steadily fading like a breath growing shallower with every moment. By February, it had reached its faintest recorded state. The change was not just significant, it was unprecedented. Professional and amateur astronomers alike scrambled to understand what was happening. It wasn't just a star losing brightness. It was a legend dimming before our eyes, a giant faltering in its final act. But there was another layer to the mystery that made the situation even more profound. Light, as it travels across space, becomes a messenger of the past. And Betelgeuse is 725 light-years away. That means the photons reaching our telescopes today began their journey centuries ago, sometime in the early 1300s, when human civilization was just beginning to claw its way into a new age. As we observe Betelgeuse, we're looking into a window of history, not the present. The truth is chilling, Betelgeuse may have already exploded long ago, and we just haven't seen it yet. This delay is known as the light travel time effect. Everything we know about Betelgeuse, its dimming, its pulsations, its flares, is a retelling of a story that ended long before we were even born. When we look at stars outside our solar system, we are seeing ghosts, fossils of light. We are watching events unfold not in real time, but in delayed echoes, stretched across hundreds of years. It adds an eerie weight to every observation. That dramatic dimming in 2019. It didn't happen then. It happened sometime in the past, centuries before, and the universe has only now delivered the message. Despite this time gap, astronomers are determined to extract every clue possible. The Great Dimming Event was a cosmic puzzle that demanded answers. And so, a team led by Andrea Dupree at the Center for Astrophysics at Harvard and Smithsonian turned to the Hubble Space Telescope. With its precision instruments, they observed Betelgeuse's outer atmosphere and detected something extraordinary. The star wasn't just dimming, it was shedding its skin. Gas was escaping Betelgeuse's outer layers at astonishing speeds, over 200,000 miles per hour. This wasn't a gentle exhale. It was a violent eruption, a massive expulsion of stellar material that traveled outward, cooled, and condensed into dust. That dust, floating between Betelgeuse and Earth, began to obscure the star's light. It was like watching a fire being slowly choked by its own smoke. And that raised a terrifying possibility: was this expulsion of mass a symptom of a terminal stage? Was the red giant's time running out faster than we thought? Many in the scientific community began to wonder, was the star preparing for its final breath, a collapse so vast it would ripple across the galaxy? Theories multiplied. One suggested Betelgeuse was entering the final throes of its life cycle, with the outer layers becoming increasingly unstable as fusion reactions shifted deep within its core. Another pointed to the star's intense convection cells, massive columns of hot plasma that rise and fall on the star's surface, possibly triggering episodic outbursts that ejected material into space. Some argued that dust, not death, was to blame. That Betelgeuse was still strong, still fighting, but being temporarily cloaked by the very material it had cast off. A third theory explored changes in the star's photosphere, where alterations in temperature and density might make it appear dimmer, even without external interference. But the more researchers looked, the more they realized it wasn't just one factor. It was all of them: dust, ejection, instability, working in concert, orchestrating a grand, fading crescendo. In the months following the dimming, analysis showed that the expelled material likely came from one of Betelgeuse's enormous convection cells, possibly one that had burst. The expelled plasma cooled as it expanded, forming microscopic dust particles that blocked starlight. The sheer mass of the ejection stunned scientists. It was estimated to be nearly 400 billion times the size of a typical solar flare from our own sun. The implications were sobering. Such a massive release of energy suggested Betelgeuse was undergoing violent internal shifts. This wasn't just a hiccup. It could be the beginning of its collapse. And while that collapse might still be tens of thousands of years away, it could also be, relatively speaking, tomorrow. If Betelgeuse does go supernova within our lifetimes, what will we see? The sky will change. Suddenly. A brilliant flash of light would pierce the night. It would shine brighter than the full moon, visible even in the middle of the day, outshining every star and rivaling the brightness of Venus, yet more constant and ghostly in its glow. For weeks, maybe months, it would hang there, an eerie, unwavering beacon. The constellation Orion, long anchored by Betelgeuse's ruby glow, would be reshaped. Its shoulder, once strong and steady, would now burn with a white-hot light before fading entirely. Then, silence. Darkness. An empty space where a giant once lived. This cataclysm, known as a core collapse supernova, begins when a star can no longer fuse elements in its core. For Betelgeuse, after billions of years turning hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into neon, and onward up the periodic table, it eventually reaches iron. But iron doesn't release energy when fused, it absorbs it. When enough iron builds up, the outward pressure from fusion stops. Gravity wins. In an instant, the core collapses in on itself, imploding at 1/4 the speed of light. The outer layers slam into this implosion, bounce back in a shockwave, and explode outward in a blaze that can span entire solar systems. The energy released in that moment, less than 10 seconds, will exceed everything our sun produces in its 10 billion year lifespan. And yet, despite all this fury, Earth will be safe. Betelgeuse is far enough away that we won't feel any radiation or physical effects. But what we will witness, what we will record, study, and share, could change everything we know about stellar evolution, death, and rebirth. Because that explosion, violent as it will be, also creates. Supernovae forge the elements that make life possible. The calcium in your bones, the oxygen you breathe, the gold in a wedding ring, all born from explosions like the one that will consume Betelgeuse. Without supernovae, there is no complex chemistry, no rocky planets, no water, no life. From death, the universe builds. When the end comes for Betelgeuse, it won't just be the loss of a star. It will be a rebirth. Its ashes will scatter across the galaxy, carried by interstellar winds to distant clouds of gas and dust. Those clouds may one day collapse, form new stars, new planets, maybe even new life. We may never know if it happens tomorrow or 1,000 years from now. We may never see the end. Or we might witness the most dazzling celestial finale of our age. But until then, we watch. We wait. And every time you step outside on a crisp winter night and look toward Orion, remember what's burning in the shoulder of that hunter. It's not just a star. It's a story still unfolding. A ticking clock of cosmic proportions. And when it finally goes dark, the sky will never be the same again.